On November 6, 2014, in the very heart of Mexico City, a discovery that is widely considered to be among the most astounding finds ever made was made. In a very short amount of time, the discovery of human remains sent shockwaves across the region, taking what had been an ordinary day for many residents and turning it into a nightmare for many. It was revealed that there were human remains in the neighborhood. This case, which would emerge as a disaster over the course of history, would unravel a web of horror and mystery, leaving an indelible impact on the history of the city in which it took place. This case would be remembered as a catastrophe throughout the course of history. So, what would take place? When law enforcement investigators came upon human remains that were dispersed around the area, they made the horrible discovery that they had been hunting for all along. This was the event that set off a chain of occurrences that would eventually involve the entirety of the nation. Following the discovery of a body, which was a horrible forerunner to the subsequent discovery of bags containing mutilated limbs, the excavation began with the discovery of a body. The body was a shocking sign of what was going to happen farther down the road. The awful brutality of the crime scene, which sent waves of panic rippling through both the authorities and the public, had the effect of sparking a frenetic search for answers in the midst of the mayhem that was occurring. It was because of this that the chaos occurred. The forensic investigation, which took place in the midst of the somber aftermath of the finding, provided essential insights into the heinous deed that had been perpetrated previously. The fact that the bones that were scattered were belonging to a single person was quickly determined by professionals, which added a particularly tragic facet to the tragedy that was taking place in front of their eyes at the time. The identification process was fraught with a great deal of difficulty due to the fact that the victim's teeth and fingers were missing. This circumstance made the process extremely challenging. As a consequence of this, the identity of the victim was concealed, which brought an extra layer of intricacy to the inquiry concerning the victim. The central figure in this mysterious story was a man by the name of Alejandro Lafuente, who was at the center of the mystery. There was no way around the fact that his life and the decisions he took would eventually become entangled with the dark strands that were being told as the story progressed. It was an unavoidable consequence. Alejandro appeared as a crucial actor throughout the complex chain of events that began with the occurrence of the first event. This was due to the fact that she possessed an imposing presence and an aura of mystery because of her presence. Her ability to persevere in the face of adversity was the only thing that could compare to the physical beauty that she possessed. Because of her dogged drive, she was characterized as a woman who possessed an extraordinary level of intelligence and unwavering determination. Several others expressed their belief that Alejandro possessed a considerable level of intelligence. Alberto Different, Alejandro's father, was a famous figure in the area of psychiatry, and his towering stature made an indelible imprint on her path to success. Alejandro's father was a significant figure in the profession. Alejandro was born into a world of riches and expectation, and her father was the one who had a huge impact on the path that she would take in life. Their relationship, which was characterized by both reverence and defiance, cast a long shadow over Alejandro's journey, pushing her to adjust her behaviors and causing her to shift her worldview in significant ways. As the daughter of a well-known psychiatrist, Alejandro had to find a way to manage the precarious balance between expectation and autonomy while simultaneously forging her own identity despite the weight of her family's reputation. She had to do this while also balancing the weight of her family's reputation. It was necessary for her to go through this procedure while simultaneously the process of building her own individuality. The road that Alejandro followed was characterized by a wealthy tapestry of academic triumphs and professional laurels, which laid the groundwork for her to become a strong force in the field of psychotherapy from the very beginning of her career. By virtue of her razor-sharp intelligence and her unflinching dedication to her profession, she persevered through the ranks of her career with a level of tenacity that was unmatched by anyone else. There was a reason for this, and that was the fact that she was enthusiastic about her work. Alejandro made the decision to join the domain of private practice and carve out a unique space for herself in the city that is densely populated as a result of her intuitive grasp of the human psyche and her love for healing. She did this in order to further her passion for healing. The practice that she initiated eventually developed into a secure sanctuary for women who were having trouble coping with the difficulties of life. It provided comfort and assistance to those who were in need of it. As a result of the compassionate approach that Alejandro took to her work and the tremendous insight that she possessed, each and every one of her customers sought refuge in the safe and secure environment that was her office. As a consequence of this, she was successful in gaining the satisfaction of her clientele. On the other hand, the shadows of personal strife were hanging in the background of the professional accomplishments. In particular, this was the situation with regard to the former. A cloud was put over Alejandro's personal life as a result of the dissolution of his marriage, which left behind the sour residue of broken promises and hopes that were shattered. For Alejandro, this resulted in a state of emotional turmoil. In spite of the fact that her childhood was a complete and utter disaster, Alejandro discovered comfort in the love that she had for her two girls. They were the guiding lights that illuminated her darkest hours, and they assisted her in getting through the most difficult times. These children were her guiding lights. A storm had been raging in Alejandro's life for some time, and the arrival of her ex-husband, which was a precursor to turmoil and grief, would push the storm to a height, bringing it to a crescendo. Alejandro's life had been experiencing a storm that had been raging for some time. The moment Alejandro experienced a moment of insanity that was fueled by a potent cocktail of rage and desperation, his life would come crashing down in a flood of violence immediately after that moment. In the event that he were to come across such a moment, this would be the situation. The heinous murder that took place later would not only leave a trail of destruction in its wake, but it would also leave a stain on the fundamental fabric of her existence. This stain would be passed down from generation to generation. In a flurry of brutality, Alejandro put an end to a life by carrying out the inconceivable with intentional precision. He also put an end to a life. He bore the responsibility for the way things turned out in the situation. For as long as the reverberations of her actions continued to reverberate through the corridors of her mind, they served as a terrifying reminder of the depths to which she had descended. While the tendrils of remorse were beginning to tighten their grip on her conscience, Alejandro made an effort to conceal the evidence of her wrongdoing. This was during the time when she was beginning to feel the effects of her guilt. Her efforts, on the other hand, would be fruitless in light of the persistent scrutiny that would be directed toward the given circumstance. The discovery of the dismembered remains of her ex-husband would mark the beginning of a new chapter in Alejandro's turbulent narrative, one that is fraught with danger and uncertainty. This new chapter would be indicated by the discovery of the remains. On the other hand, this new chapter would be followed by another chapter. The beginning of a comprehensive investigation into the heinous act that was committed by law enforcement agents marked the beginning of the inexorable spinning of the wheels of justice. This inquiry was being conducted to determine the specifics of the crime. They pursued every possible lead with unyielding determination, making sure that they did not overlook any potential leads in their investigation. This was due to the fact that they were so intent on discovering the truth. Over the course of a relatively short period of time, concerns began to be raised about Alejandro, which cast a cloud of concern over her aspirations for the future, which had previously been bright. A body of evidence began to take shape during the course of the investigation, and each individual piece of evidence contributed to the strengthening of the case against Alejandro. During this time, the investigation was being carried out. The authorities were compelled to take the essential and necessary action that was demanded of them as a result of the testimony of a neighbor, which provided a blistering portrayal of guilt. This was the case when the testimony was supplemented with strong forensic evidence. In spite of the vehement protests and vehement denials, it appeared as though Alejandro's destiny was completely predetermined. In addition to the fact that the evidence appeared to be stacked against her, it also appeared that the weight of the evidence was stacked against her. At the same time that the trial of Alejandro was capturing the attention of the nation, the hallowed halls of justice were witnesses to the rising drama that was taking place across the country at the same time. The defense argued that the defendant was acting in self-defense, despite the fact that there were a large number of witnesses and the media was watching closely. They made an effort to sway the jury's decision by telling stories of victims in desperation in an effort to sway their decision. The scales of justice remained unchanged throughout the entirety of the process, despite the fact that the truth was eventually brought to light and brought to light. As a result of the fact that Alejandro was only given a sentence of 1 year and 4 months, the general public's reaction was one of anger and confusion. A surprising change occurred in the course of events that had been taking place up until this point. The ghost of justice, on the other hand, would turn out to be only a temporary phenomenon, as the sentence would be overturned and replaced with a suspended sentence at a later time. It was as a consequence of this that people started to question the effectiveness of the judicial system, particularly in light of the horrifying actions that were carried out. As a result of the immediate and vehement reaction that was received from the general populace, a number of media outlets sought explanations and accountability from the administration. A bright spotlight was focused on the fundamental flaws of a system that is ill-equipped to deal with the complexity of human nature as a result of the case, which became a lightning rod for debate. This was a consequence of the case. In order to shed light on the areas in which the system is lacking, this was actually done. Even if there was a cacophony of voices, there was one truth that would not change. The wheels of justice, despite the fact that they turned slowly, would eventually grind exceptionally well. This was the truth. Throughout the years, this was the truth that never changed. Alan Cabrera. Quella, who was a scion of a distinguished lineage, provided Alejandro with comfort when he was experiencing the effects of the turmoil that he had been through. This was the moment when Alejandro found solace in Alan's arms. Alejandro's own tragic past served as a stark contrast to the powerful illustration of success that Alan's family provided. Alan's family was surrounded by wealth and importance, and they served as a powerful illustration of success. Even though they were living in a wealthy and privileged environment, Alejandro and Alan were able to develop a connection that broke the constraints of class and convention. This was accomplished despite the fact that they were living side by side. It was possible for them to achieve this goal despite the fact that they were living together. Passion and a mutual sense of yearning between the two of them were the driving forces behind the blossoming of their relationship, which took place against the backdrop of a whirlwind romance. This was the driving force behind the blossoming of their relationship. The passage of time brought about an increase in their love for one another, as well as their devotion to one another, which ultimately led to the formation of a web of devotion and desire that served to bind them together. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in their life narrative, which had been filled with a number of tumultuous occurrences. It was not long before rumors of marriage began to spread, which marked the beginning of a new journey in their life. Despite the fact that they were content in their marriage, there were indications of discord that were lurking beneath the surface of their relationship. The challenges that they faced in the intimacy of their home posed a risk of tearing the delicate fabric that held their relationship together. Their love was put to the test to the extent that it could be tested both physically and emotionally without breaking down. The cloud of Alejandro's past loomed large, casting a shadow over their relationship and putting their love to the test. In the past, Alejandro and Alan had a relationship that was perfect. But as tensions continued to grow and tempers flared, the relationship began to disintegrate, which ultimately resulted in a tragic conclusion. Because of Alan's unexpected disappearance, Alejandro's life was surrounded by a cloud of worry, which tore apart the tranquility of their marital bliss and cast a pall of dread over his universe. This caused Alejandro to feel as though his entire world was filled with dread. Alejandro experienced a sense of dread that permeated his entire world as a result of this. The nagging feeling of dread became more and more real as the days turned into weeks, and it permeated every aspect of Alejandro's existence with a sense of impending doom. This occurred at the same time that the days turned into weeks. In an attempt to conceal the truth, Alejandro set out on a journey that was not only a convoluted journey, but also a journey of deception and deceit. He worked hard to conceal the unfortunate truth about Alan's fate by spinning a complex web of lies in order to divert attention away from the reality of the situation. He did this in an effort to conceal the truth. On the other hand, her efforts would be ineffective in the face of unrelenting scrutiny, as the unstoppable progress of justice would rapidly approach her from all sides. This would make her efforts ineffective. There would be no fruit from her labors. A disturbing reminder was the fact that it exposed the complete and utter brutality of her actions for everyone to see, as well as the fact that it was a terrifying reminder of the depths to which Alejandro had stooped. Among the things that served as a reminder of the depths to which Alejandro had sunk, the discovery of the mutilated remains of Alan was one of the things that contributed to this. The investigation into the circumstances surrounding his passing was carried out with a high degree of accuracy by the investigators. They were able to accomplish this by unraveling the complex web of lies that Alejandro had been spreading and exposing the truth for everyone to see. The verdict of the case was decided in favor of justice, and her fate was irrevocably marred with the stigma of guilt as a result of the disclosure of Alejandro's dark secrets after the case was decided. The outcome of the case was as described here. In the face of unfathomable atrocities, the meticulous investigation, which was carried out in a methodical manner, served as a testament to the unwavering determination of law enforcement. This was a testament to the determination of law enforcement. In the midst of the darkness that had engulfed them all, it offered a glimmer of insight into the potential resolutions that could be offered. Alejandro Lafuente was handed a sentence that required him to spend the rest of his life incarcerated. This sentence was handed down after the jury had finally lowered the gavel and announced their verdict. As a consequence of the shadows that she had created for herself, the future that she had once considered to be bright was now obscured. Even in spite of this, the wheels of justice would continue to turn, and they would be propelled forward by the unrelenting pursuit of truth and accountability. A number of appeals were filed by the legal team that was representing Alejandro over the course of the subsequent years. The goal of these appeals was to overturn the sentence that had been handed down, which was considered to be quite severe. However, when they were confronted with an overwhelming amount of evidence and the outrage of the general public, their efforts would inevitably fail to produce the desired results. Alejandro's fate was ultimately decided once she was sentenced to death, which served as a vivid reminder of the consequences that would result from her heinous behavior. The application of the death penalty, which came as a result of the application of the death penalty, was the ultimate decision. Her father, Alberto Different, had accomplished a great deal in his professional life, but the crimes that Alejandro committed had repercussions that were felt far beyond the confines of the courts, and they cast a long shadow on the accomplishments that he had accomplished. Her father had achieved a great deal of success in his professional life. The shadow of his daughter's transgressions left a permanent stain on Alberto's legacy, which established a stain on his reputation that would continue to linger for many years to come. This stain would continue to linger for a long time. There was a time when it was said that he was a model of excellence in his field, despite the fact that his daughter was the one who was responsible for having committed these offenses. In the annals of criminal history, the case of Alejandro Lafuente serves as a terrible reminder of the vulnerability of the human brain and the depths to which it is capable of plunging. This is a case that serves as a reminder of the horrific nature of the human brain. This is a case that was dealt with during the period of time when the criminal justice system was in operation. During the course of our investigation into her turbulent journey, we are compelled to bring ourselves face to face with unsettling truths regarding the nature of responsibility and salvation. The story of Alejandro is, at its core, a demonstration of the difficulties that are associated with mental health and the tremendous impact that trauma, which has not been adequately handled, has had on the individual. It is a cautionary tale, a stinging reminder of the consequences of unchecked rage and unrestrained ambition, and it is a warning tale about her journey into darkness. The story serves as a cautionary tale. It is her descent into the shadows that serves as the focus of this narrative. Despite this, there is a ray of hope that shines through the midst of the misery. It is a beacon of light in the midst of the darkness. Those individuals whose lives were irrevocably changed as a result of her actions are able to experience a sense of closure and catharsis as a result of the resolution of the case concerning Alejandro. Additionally, they are able to feel a sense of justice being served and a sense of peace being given to them as a result of the resolution of the case. In addition, as we get closer to the end of this chapter, let us not forget the opportunities that were missed and the lives that were sacrificed in the pursuit of the truth and the establishment of justice at the time. Thank you for watching. I recommend our other crime videos.